welcome to Unapologetically You. Um, Basically, we are going to go through carrying stress, where we carry stress, and how to identify its origin. So, welcome to the podcast where we explore health, wellness, and mindset that helps you step fully into your power. I'm your host, Tulsi, and my guest co host today is Krista. And today we're going to dive into carrying stress, how to identify the origin. And for anyone who isn't invested in spirituality, we take a little bit of a dive from the superficial to the depths of how our physical body is carrying things like our habits, our emotions, and how we can strip away some of the wounds, some of the trauma, maybe even going into the ancestral background. You've met her before on episode 1. I'm so pleased to have her back as our co-host. Hi, Krista.
Hi,
How are you?
doing well. How are you today?
Good. I'm good. We're going to go straight into the 3 questions, which I love starting off with. What is your biggest win this week? Do you know?
I love the topic that you picked because my biggest win, I could talk about boundaries all day long, but which boundaries of what area of my life has been really important to me? And the topic you picked is listening to your body. Where does it come from? Why are we being notified by these areas of our body? So, my biggest win is actually following through with action in the boundary of self-care in regards to the physical pain I've been um, experiencing, when really the answer is I just really needed to sit down and my body was trying to tell me that. So again, boundaries just in a different way, um, experiencing the reminder of this area needs attention in my own boundaries. So I feel like I've been successful in that this week. I'm proud of myself for being able to hold space for just me in
Yeah,
those moments. So, how
that's
about
amazing.
yourself?
That's a really good topic to actually touch on before I actually dive in, because I feel like we're so conditioned to follow certain things regarding busyness, regarding, every time people are busy and it feels as if you're all competing against one another on that, work treadmill, I guess. And sometimes we just want to say, you know what, pause, let's just hit pause, let's just hit stop. And the fact that you are listening to yourself, and that's the whole point of this, especially when I speak to corporate clients, people don't listen to themselves enough, and then they end up burning out. They end up going on holiday and becoming sick. Now, we're going to talk about this in the main section. I don't even know what my biggest win this week is. I feel a lot lighter than the previous month. Having said that, it's so funny because you had asked me before we hit record what's going on, and I was like, I think I have like a headache coming on. So I was like, oh goodness, I don't know. But you know how sometimes you push past things to obviously get things done, like recording this podcast. I'd
Hmm.
already put it off a couple of times, haven't I, Krista? So I think the biggest win is probably going, okay, I'm listening to myself, generally slowing down, but right now we're kind of just ticking off the to-do list, right?
Hmm. Definitely.
I'll say I'm gonna start off the second question actually, because normally I say the second question, but I usually ask what made you smile, but I'm just gonna jump straight in and tell you all what made me smile. And I'm a huge Swiftie, and her album literally came out the day we're recording it, and I'm addicted. I'm obsessed. That is my character trait. I obsess and repeat songs over and over and over again. So that's something that is making me smile right now. What about you?
Uh, watching, literally watching you smile over a Swiftie album has been great. It is. I am not a huge Swiftie fan. I do love her music and what I know of her, but I've learned so much through you
Mm,
and some of her recent interviews here lately that, wow, what a powerful feminine.
yes.
wow, look at her journey. And we always say, the strongest have the toughest journey. And then we wonder, why was our journey so hard sometimes? And I have to take this back to the question you asked. What made you smile? The fact that I had to ask myself, but did you die having to sit down and not finish what you were doing? Well, the actual answer is no. And then it's me being hard on myself because I have things to do. Okay, well, your body has things to do. Krista, have a seat.
Yeah.
Did somebody out there die because it wasn't done? Actually, no. So,
Yeah.
what are you upset for? Did you have to get it done? Okay, I see your point, self. Thank you. So, I do relish in the fact of proving myself wrong in some instances. And I actually do find quite a lot of joy in that because I can be unapologetically exactly me.
Oh my God. I'm going to give you like clicks here. This is amazing. I love that line. I think that that needs to be a little clip that we need to use on our promo because that is so, like, it's so on point, right? I feel like when we see others be unapologetically themselves, go through challenges, it really allows us to give zero Fs. We could say fucks, right? Let's just say it. Give zero fucks. Um, and be ourselves because at the end of the day, I'm going to use your line again to say, did anyone die? No. And funnily enough, a lot of Swifty fans have said the same thing in, I think it was a couple of years ago, it was an interview. And some of the fans were like, oh my God, I died. I seriously died because it was so dramatic about certain things. And so it kind of reminded me of that. Like, did you die though? It's like, oh my gosh, I seriously died because of this. And I think it's a lot of the younger generation, but it's just really funny that that had become a trend. Okay, so I am a very big believer on setting intentions. Now, Krista, you and I have caught up quite a bit this week. And for me, I think setting an intention is just a powerful um vision that we can channel and tunnel our energy toward. And so, what would you say would be your intention between now and next week?
Hmm. I had a feeling this was coming again, but I hadn't really sat with it because I've reflected, so we have reflected so much this week already, and I feel like holding space, it's not just holding space for yourself, but holding space for mental processing to view not just this panoramic view, but viewing from something from all angles. And when I say that mentally, we normally don't see other people's perspective, but when you're open to seeing not just one, two, or three, you're holding space for being open to having sight. And when you have the sight and can hold space for that, you're also holding space for yourself for understanding that question we always ask ourselves, why? And I have asked myself why a whole lot this week. So I want to give myself a little bit more space to figure out the why without being from a biased standpoint. But I am in this situation. I feel this. But there's this whole other side you're not seeing. So rather than just jump the gun and, we like to just be in our feelings sometimes, and that's good. But I would like to hold a little bit of space before I just, jump off the rails and have to ask myself, but did anybody die again?
Yeah.
So I would like to place that intention that I'm not going to just jump the gun because I'm harder on myself, but rather be more willing to ask why and accept the answers that come. Not that I don't accept them, but we have to find data that supports it. Or at least I do. That's my analytical Virgo in me.
Hmm.
But I love data. And I'm like, but that just doesn't make sense. I'm holding space for the why because I want to know why. I want to learn how I came up with whatever it is at hand,
Yeah.
conclusion. So,
And it's really
mental space.
absolutely. And it's really interesting that you say that it's almost as if you're allowing yourself a pregnant pause. Is that a good way of summarizing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it totally is. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just like instead of thinking and going ahead on that cycle, that train, you're just going, let me just pause for a second and give it a bigger picture. Just see it from an overview perspective. What is this telling me? What do I need to learn from this? And I don't think many people ask that type of deep question or give themselves space to do that. So that in itself just shows huge growth, because nobody's
Thank you.
asking you to do any of this. This is the point of it, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's holding a gun to your head to say, Krista, you must evolve, you must grow, you must better yourself. You're choosing to do that. I feel like anybody who's listening to this podcast, wherever you're finding it, that's what you're choosing to do by listening to this type of podcast. And I'm such a big believer that things will find you at the right time. But my intention is really funny because I feel like my mindset has definitely shifted from, oh, well, that will never happen to, but what if this is happening?
Ooh.
Right. And so instead of me, I know how powerful I am regarding manifestation and envisioning the future. And I'm able to teach some other people about the tools that I use. I haven't been intentional, like, produce a workshop or become a coach around it. But what my intention is, what does my higher self think about this? And I always love, love, love. I used to do this a lot as a coach. I would program things in advance in preparation for the next training session they would have with me. Now, usually it was, oh my gosh, I need to rush and check this program like just before they come in for their session. Oh my gosh, I need to plan and program for that day. Now, what I've discovered when I was, especially when I was in F1 working with them, I used to try and make my future life's, I would try and make my future life version of myself easier. And what I mean by that is I would end the session, put my notes down, and then I would do the program for the following. Like there would still be a broad overview of what their goal was, but I wouldn't dictate their whole 12-week program, not all the time, because it would shift, program to program, week to week. And if I'd found a greater progression that session, I would include it with the sets and reps that they would do the following week. So the overall crux of the program wouldn't change, but the minor tweaks would. And I remember being so inundated, so busy during different projects and different hours. And I used to work a lot, like so many hours of the day. And I remember going into my files just before this client would come. And I'm like, oh no, crap, I need to, sort the program out just before they come. And I open the program and I'm like, oh my gosh, the past version of me was amazing because she's already done it. And I loved having appreciated the past version of myself because the version of myself looked towards the future version, asking, how can I make my life easier? And so I want to continue to do that now. I want to continue to say, how can I make my future life easier? How can I support my future self? And I feel like I'm asking those questions day to day because I'm like, well, how can I make, what does my future self want me to do? And it is very broad, but I feel like I've got my to do list, I've got my, things that I need to do regarding my work. But when I ask those questions, it kind of helps me imagine my vision, the desires that I have, the dreams that I want to manifest into this reality. But that's kind of my long version of what my intention is.
That's okay. I have a question for you, though.
Go on, go on.
Would you say that the previous version of you did the extra legwork for the future version of you, being prepared, being ready, having everything pre?
Mm.
completed and all you have to do is just show
Turn
up.
up.
Would you
Yes.
say
Yes.
that now you're quite possibly could be in a space where you might not ever need to do the extra legwork because that's all you need to do is just show up. Everything else just flows naturally because you've already done it.
Oh my gosh. I love
Are you
that.
trusting and surrendering in yourself so much more now that showing up was actually the biggest challenge and you just did the extra legwork because you needed that extra meat and potatoes on why you were showing up?
Oh my gosh. I think like you've just dropped the mic. I have nothing to add to that.
It just sounds like you're trusting so much more in your natural talent that
I hope
comes so
so.
freely off the cuff.
I hope
And I
so.
love that for you. I do.
And I'm a bit like you. Like your intention was how you can show up for yourself
Hmm.
and the way that you can do that for yourself by pausing, by reflecting on those. And I feel the same answer, but in a different way of, yeah, how can I show up for my future
Hmm.
self? And like, I think both answers are very similar, but they're very different because we're still honoring ourselves in the present moment. And I feel like that is the most important time for us to manifest our future, right?
Absolutely. I think we're just as humans in this society we live in. I do think that we're programmed and conditioned to if the A happens, then B happens. And I don't want C to happen. So let me hurry up and scramble. And I haven't been in that mindset for quite a while. I feel like I'm just fine tuning
Mm,
things that I've learned. And it's not just regular fine tuning. I'm actually trusting in it way more than I did before.
yeah, I love that. Love, love, love that. All right. Are you ready to get into our meat and potatoes? Hot topic of the day.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. So today we are going straight into the hot topic of the day. Our mind and our body are inseparable. Emotions impact our nervous system. Our trauma affects our genetic function. PTSD affects the immune system. When we take charge of our emotions, it can actually shift your life expectancy. Now, I was actually doing some research on this topic and I was collating some information for a presentation I was doing with some corporate clients. And it's so interesting because as I was doing some of the research, I was thinking to myself that the more we distance ourselves from our feelings, the more disempowered and out of touch we can become with our true self. Like we've literally both given that answer regarding our intentions, coming back to our true self, coming back into that pause. But
Yeah.
where do we go with all these feelings that are a demanding? No, sorry, let me say that again. Where do we go with the feelings that are deemed inappropriate, unacceptable, or unwanted? And what I mean by that is studies have shown that people store unwanted emotions. Now, disclaimer, not all body aches or illnesses are psychosomatic. We do understand that this is about reoccurring patterns that are emerging as we look at people's bodily reactions to stress. So, this isn't saying, oh, you may not be having a disease or anything like that because you haven't got it checked out. Please, this is not medical advice. Please, if you have any concerns, especially around your heart, please go seek medical advice and professional support on that. But what we're talking about here is the psychosomatic aspect of disease and illness. And fear is a huge driving force behind repression, and it's frequently rooted in our past. I know personally, when I've experienced some overwhelm or trauma, repression is often necessary for your brain and body to deal with that. But it also, there's this over dependence on repression fuels psychosomatic symptoms and self destructive patterns. Now, I've written a few things down. So, Krista, I hope you can indulge me in some of these. Now, bearing in mind, there is a list of patterns that you may recognize or identify with, but remember these psychosomatic reactions are not neatly organized. Some of them are going to overlap, some of them are going to converge, and it really depends upon your character, your interpersonal style. And so, this is going to be a general overview of what I've done so far, the research that I was going to put in my presentation, And it was all about the psychosomatic symptoms that you can use as an introduction for personal exploration. So, say, for example, your behavior is reactionary and you go through um, a lot of feelings of anger. You may have pain around the lower back because those two are associated. So, say, for example, if you sit in frustration, if you have stored repressed anger. So it's not necessarily that you are angry all the time. That could be one thing. But it's also saying if you've not been able to express that residual anger, you're not being able to articulate your frustration or address the conflicts with others, your lower back kind of holds on to that frustration. There's also something around fear being connected to your stomach and intestine. So when you're afraid, you tend to tense your stomach and your intense intestines. So sayings such as, I'm sick to my stomach, are usually bodily responses to conflict. And the more you deny or the more you repress your feelings, the more those physical reactions could manifest. Now, obviously, as I made the disclaimer earlier, I'm not going to repeat that, but there is an association between hurt and heart and chest. Now, I read somewhere that if you've had your heart broken, there's actually a thing called your physical heart. There are microscopic tears around your heart muscle when you've been heartbroken. Now, for the life of me, I can't remember where this research was, where I heard it from, but I genuinely did remember that piece of advice. Chest pains can be extremely worrying, but when someone experiences those, even if you've gone through medical workups and you found no physiological cause for that, those symptoms that we go through are asking whether someone is hurt in love. You know, sometimes we dismiss our past relationships, you know, the impact that it has on us. Have we been able to mourn and grieve that relationship? Um, People who experience headaches are often associated with having loss of control. You know, the control of feeling or being in control is real for a lot of people, and the emphasis on control can eventually lead to burnout. I know it did for me, and splitting headaches, migraines were all trying to attempt holding on to control, right? Controlling tendencies are exacerbating many, many problems. We're asked to let go, to accept what we can and cannot control. Obviously, there's more things like neck and shoulders, fatigue, numbness, all relating to burdens, responsibilities, resentments, trauma. So there is a lot that I had obviously researched. And rather than me just go on and on about that, I want to bring you in, Kristen. I want to ask you, what are your thoughts around this?
I, you know, having been in the medical field, I don't think it's addressed enough. I don't think that, and I'm going to, I don't know the appropriate way to generalize this, but having emotions and showing emotions is a sign of weakness. I believe that stands true in some types of medical forum. And they automatically categorize it and funnel all of those things to one area, which is just mental health, not drawing attention to the root cause, right? And that might be need mental health and behavioral um, type therapies, but I don't think that they're always related. And if there was some type of balance between medical information, scientific study, and holistic care, a bridge, if you will, between the two. Not everybody offers that unless you really, are looking for have found the right person who has um, dove into both arenas of education and expertise. I think it's very important and it's very growing in demand And it's times like this where we are bringing it to awareness. Okay, well, how do you feel today or yesterday or last week? Do you think that was reactive or a response to a specific stimuli? Is this psychosomatic? Do you think that this would play a role in that specific situation? I don't think those questions are being asked enough in,
No,
I'll
I
just say,
agree.
in the world, in the practical room of any type of care, to be honest.
And so, do
So,
you think that, and this is again, this is very generalized, but do you think that when we end up going to the medical profession, that they lean on what they already know, what the textbooks have told them, what the teachings have instructed them to say, do, and act? And a lot of people just want a quick fix and they want it to be medicinal. There is a reason why the pharmaceutical industry is trillions of billions of dollars in the plus.
wow, that's a very good point. If I just see this patient and just give them a fix of a medication, they can get in, get out. I can get my numbers. I can show that I'm still seeing patients. I'm seeing enough patients and I'm bringing in the appropriate amount of money. Healing is truly priceless.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to who you are is priceless. But also, I have found very priceless finding the right um, practitioner, whether that's holistic or medical, who's willing to open up to the unknown of questioning their own practice during a conversation. Hey, I realize you said I might have carditis, for example, only, but I truly feel like my heart hurts. And how
Yeah.
you were talking about tears in the heart over heartache,
Mm-hmm.
that really sat with me. And I thought, wow, I never thought about heartache in that way. Relative to when you just bear with me for a second, you step out of the shower, your skin is wet, your skin dries. The reason we feel we need lotion is because there's no we're not retaining oils because we're washing that off with soap, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when water dries on our skin, those are the same minute tears because it's not getting the appropriate nutrients. Now, what are we doing to our heart in those moments of heartbreak, time periods, years, months, days, however long that is? How detrimental is that to your overall well being? The heart is the strongest muscle in the body. Is
Mm-hmm.
that not the craziest? Like, wow, it happens the same way to the skin. It probably happens in the same way to other organs. I'm just reflecting on what you said in that way of acknowledging that the impact of what is actually happening during such heavy emotional time.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of mind blown.
And I wanted to actually, I know you've got a lot of information about fascia, but this is something that I actually wrote down. Now, it's not in my presentation, but I'm going to give you a series of thoughts that I had written down.
Okay.
And it was all about fascia. It was saying that your fascia isn't just tissue. It's your body's multi-dimensional internet, a liquid crystal scalar antenna woven through all 15 dimensions. It translates not money, memory, plasma, light codes into emotion and motion. So that tight shoulder, it's not just bad posture. It could be the unprocessed breakup from 3 lifetimes ago, curled into the fascia, whispering, we're not ready to love again. Every breath, every stretch either braids or frays your fascia's scalar lines.
Mm.
Hydration, spiraled movement, and sacred sound can literally recode your fascia to run eternal life through the currents. So if we ignore our fascia while trying to raise our own frequency, it's like trying to stream God on 3G while you're thinking you're 3D. If you're tending to your fascia, you hydrate, you stretch, you speak to it, because fascia is the secret bridge between your human suit and your original 12 strand source code. Now, I don't know where that came from, how I found it out, and what was written from it, but I wanted to get your own thoughts around all of that.
I literally sat down back in my chair and was like, oh my God, that summed it up completely. So perfectly written, read, spoke, just wow, mind blown. I had to sit with that. That is the perfect description. And the reason I say that is I worked with many clients in mostly athletes or previous athletes
Mm,
with residual issues. And after the injury heals, why do I keep having chronic pain? Not necessarily because that injury was still present. However, it's quite possible that they did that multiple lifetimes. And this lifetime, it was imminent because they chose not to heal it last lifetime, right?
mhm.
So, as you're talking that interdimensional, multidimensional, literally network of communication through every plane, that's truly what it is. If you were to step into it or put on a bodysuit from the tips of your toes all the way to your neck, well, literally your head, but we're not going to do that. Um, and it encases everything, right? The, that is what your fascia does. It holds everything together, it holds things in place. When you get injured, it creates this callus like interconnected adhesion that just calcifies into a hard mass. It might feel like if you push on your thigh or your forearm and run it from top to bottom, bottom to top, it might feel like lumpiness or gravel. Those are adhesions. And
Yeah.
depending the depth of the adhesion, the longevity, the injury, and or hardship and blockage in your body has been there. That's that time frame. The more painful it is, how long has this adhesion been holding you together because you didn't address a more chronic condition or more acute condition from before that you never knew was acute? Now it's chronic. um,
Yes.
all of that communication is held within the fascia. All of the nerve endings, geez, how you pick up on just your pain receptors, everything is just so intertwined in fascia. Your hydration, if you are not hydrated, what happens? That bodysuit feels like somebody's put it, like sucked even more air out of it. And you're like, oh,
You
geez.
know what? You know what it reminds me of? I just had an image of that bodysuit. You know how, like, when you put wool into the washing machine and it shrinks?
Yes,
It's a bit like that,
yes,
right? You've put your bodysuit on
yes.
the wrong setting and you're like, oh no, like there's parts of it that just won't fit right.
Yeah. So, I don't know how prominent this is around the world. However, there's a brand called Spanx, and they are for putting everything in there when you got a tight dress to put
Flushing
on
it
or
all in.
whatever. Yes, I think of fascia as Spanx, and it's funny that we say that and we're talking about this because we're trying to stuff things back where they're supposed to be. Well, the
Yes.
reason they're not where they're supposed to be is because your fascia down and underneath the surface is probably has a lot of scar tissue and memory in there. The
Yeah.
memory is holding on to hardships, whether it's closer to whichever chakra it's at, is all connected to a possible reason why it's like that from another lifetimes. And every time you go do fascia work and fascia manipulation to release these areas, you're also releasing pockets of emotion,
Mm,
pockets of pain, pain that you never felt. I'm talking centuries ago.
hmm.
And the depth of that pain will sometimes be truly, truly astronomical. And that's where, when that is released, that tear in the heart you were talking about earlier, your body's not so focused on the area of the fascia where it was working so hard, but it now can focus on the other areas that need attention. So if you're taking care of your fascia, your body will naturally help take care of other areas that you're not picking up on just yet. Fascia is so important. It's the biggest notification system. That's like your notifications in your phone. That's what your fascia is.
And it's really funny how obviously there's a lot of integrated network of fascia from the palm of our hands to the bottom of our feet. Obviously, it's why it's white. That's why obviously they hold a lot of nerves, but they end to one point to another, right?
Hmm.
So I always think of it as cling film, that clear film that you wrap your food around. I always think that clear film wraps around our muscles. And then that
Hmm.
long, 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 long thread ends up pulling all the way down to our feet and towards the top of our head. Now, a lot of that ends up becoming tight. We think that we need to address the muscle or the organs. Now, the reason I'm explaining this is because I had a lot of tension around my hips and I ended up with a lot of lower back pain. And yes, it might have been from not addressing how I was feeling emotionally. And earlier I mentioned about the lower back and sitting in frustration, right? Not addressing conflicts with others. And you know what? I was probably the best example of this because I would always hold things in. I wouldn't share with other people how I truly felt. I would journal about it, but I wouldn't share or raise it with other people. And so obviously there
Mm.
was a consequence to that. Later on in my life, when I realized, oh, well, you know what, I can manipulate my fascia by rolling on a squash ball, or, you know, you can do foam rolling and all of these bells and whistles that ended up happening. And I learned about these tools through the strength conditioning industry. And it didn't matter how much I mobilized the area, manipulated it with tools and, you know, foam rollers and hard rollers and squash balls. None of it made a difference, no matter how much time, energy, and effort I was putting into it. And the thing that happened to me, the biggest turning point for me was when I meditated. And I was obviously trying out all these different meditation techniques. And personally, I wanted to use myself as an example. And I just sat with it. I was laying down and I said, you know, what do you need? And then I just sent light into that area. I held space around that area. And Kristen, no word of a lie. I want to touch wood right now, but it hasn't come back since. I remember it
Mm.
occurred to me when I was speaking on the phone with somebody for almost an hour and a half and I didn't move my awkward position. And usually I would need to keep moving because it was so irritated when I wouldn't move. And so when I discovered, wait a second, I've been sat in this awkward position for 90 minutes and I've not had the need to move. Well, wait a second, maybe that meditation worked. Maybe I just needed to hold space around that area. So when I was doing a lot of yoga and I was again branching out to different aspects of yoga, this one yoga instructor said, do forward folds. Now, I don't know about you and how much yoga you do, especially you guys who are listening in. Forward folds were really, really difficult for me. Like as tight hamstrings, tight calves, you know, feeling a bend in the back. Like it wasn't comfortable. Now, somebody gave me some tools to make it, you know, less uncomfortable, but you know, you're going through the emotions of release at this point. You're doing something super, super simple, basic, if anything, and your body's uncomfortable with it. And what do we do when we're uncomfortable? We kind of push it away. We compartmentalize it. And I was in this forward fold, and I can't remember how long it was, but it was an extended forward fold, like maybe 2 to 3 minutes, maybe even 5 minutes, which is quite a long time in yoga. And I just started crying and crying and crying. And the yoga instructor was saying, well, this is you flushing out the areas that are holding on to emotions around your kidneys. And it's really interesting because the more I went into a deeper, you know, I may not have known the origin of it, but I knew it was holding something and I just needed to hold space for it to be released. And so, have you ever experienced anything like that, Krista?
Yes. in the beginning, I feel like I was opposite of that. I couldn't just show it attention and give it light. I feel like it was truly trapped behind lifetimes of junk. It wasn't just meditation for me. I did meditation when we first met. I started meditation and completely different game. I wasn't just doing the physical things of releasing fascia. It was like I was breaking down the dam of a reservoir that's been building for lifetimes. And when I finally incorporated meditation in that, in the way that you have actually taught me, which I don't think I've ever said that before to you, um, showing the area light, pouring light into it rather than imagining this reservoir just chaotically pouring out into everywhere else, almost like it what was coming out of the area and holding all of that pain was toxic to somewhere else. I was treating it bad and I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to help not break down the whole dam, but just let's unlock one of the gates and slowly do this versus just going but demolishing everything. And so showing that area and light after learning meditation through one of your channels, that's when I was like, okay, that give myself grace bit. That's serious. That is a real thing. I didn't know that. So it's kind of blown away in the way that that worked for me also. But for me, I was hand in hand. I didn't realize how old my soul was, and how many experiences I'd had leading up to I have this issue. I need to take care of it. And it was the fear of, okay, well, what is all of that going to entail?
Hmm.
That was holding me back from taking action for so long. Hence, its chronicness.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So,
sometimes we do go to the ends of the earth to try and figure out what is wrong through this medical, logical way. And a lot of times when all the scans are cleared, or, there is there is a statement from the doctors or the physiotherapist or the osteopaths just saying, look, we're going to try these so that you sink your money deeper into these practices, when actually they should have just said, where does this come from? What happened? How do you feel? What is it about yourself that you are feeling stuck in expressing yourself? Where do you feel stuck expressing yourself? Where do you feel uncomfortable? What aspects of yourself are you comfortable with? What aspects of yourself are you uncomfortable with? And you said this right at the start of the podcast when you said people don't ask those questions because they don't make the link between the psychological and the physiological.
have you ever been to a doctor that has asked you those questions? When you're out of ideas, what do? We go to the doctor or a practitioner or whatever department of medicine, and we say we need help. Do they ask you those questions that you just asked?
I think there probably are some practitioners who do that. I've never met any practitioner of that nature, but I have a little bit of hope that there are one or two aspects that, when we look at substance
Mm-hmm.
abuse, for example, yes, substance abuse causes catastrophic repercussions to our body, but they are stemmed from a psychological traumatic experience. And a lot of times we've held on to that experience and it's not conscious. Something may have happened
Mm.
when we were a child and our body has decided you're not going to remember this because it's too stressful for you to release and address and go through. So, you know what? I'm going to tuck it away on purpose to protect you. And we haven't got any control about that, but our body and our brain, I feel like we forget that they are interlinked and we are cutting ourselves off from that intricate web of communication.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Thanks.
That's a good one. And that brings me to another area that I know it's on the list somewhere. Let me tell you. when we do this form of releasing prior trauma, there has to be an already learned means, method, routine of nervous system regulation. Because when you release that trauma be to come out, however it's going to come out, it might be a scream, it might be tears, it might be pain, it however it comes out, are we holding ourselves allowing ourselves to purge? Are we not holding space to not judge ourselves in those moments so we don't have a panic attack of where all these feelings came
Mm-hmm.
from in this very moment? So already having established and being ready for something to dive in, or as far as practice of regulation, and then diving into what is the origin of what I'm feeling,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people don't realize that that is pain. That might be a pain that you accepted from your parents. We don't know. That's for you to find out. However, it is real and it's implanted in there. And sometimes we tuck it away, but what our bodies are best at doing is protecting us. And if
Yeah.
that's not something we can emotionally handle, it'll store it for later when we're stronger.
Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head on that one. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So as you're
Agree.
going through all this healing, people say, man, it just feels like it's getting harder. No, no, no. Your capacity of strength is just growing that immensely.
Yeah.
That's no longer a measurement. Why are we trying to measure that anymore? You
I'm
know?
so glad you said that because I said that to my friend. I just said life gets easier in a way because our tolerance from what we've handled has raised our own bar. So something that we've gone through and we've overcome is no longer a challenge. So, which means that the next challenge that we overcome has to be a little bit greater and a little bit more uncomfortable, something that we've never experienced before. And that is where our threshold has matched us. And it's up to us to overcome that, however we, decide to do it. And then that becomes our new threshold. That becomes our new baseline. But yeah, I think you've described it very, very well as, we aren't giving ourselves the capacity to listen because I feel like we're so busy asking others for the answers.
I'm guilty.
I mean,
I'm guilty. I've done it. I still do it.
yeah.
And it's not always that I'm looking for an answer. I'm specifically with you. I'm like, what sliver of this picture am I not seeing? But if I
Hmm.
lay the picture out, she's going to ask me the right question. I'll be like, oh, duh.
Yeah, but that's the point.
And
You knew the answer.
yes, I just could not put it into words. And I don't know why I couldn't put it into words. I knew what I was trying to say and how I was getting there. But I was looking at the ground like, oh,
But you know what? To
hmm.
interrupt you right there, I think that's why people resonate with music or art or artistry, creativity in some way, because they're not able to verbalize it, they can paint it. They can listen to a song that actually vibrates and helps them through that. So it's not a case of we need to intellectualize it. For some people, they're able to express it in a very creative way. And that's why art is so powerful.
That is a really good point. And as you were speaking and saying that, I was saying, wow, I am not, I was just thinking, I'm not like some creative person in the creative arts department. And then I was like, but I have strength so much in other places. That's actually what I deem as art. So it's not just a creative art, it's your art because
Yes.
you were made as art. And it's the word itself is different for everybody. And I think that is exactly that. Do I have a way to express what I'm feeling, no matter the emotion? And the answer to that for a lot of people is no, because we look at our outside.
Mm-hmm.
We look at what we're around, the people we're around. Oh, who's going to judge me now? And you said it earlier, you get to a certain point in your journey where fuck it applies a lot. It does. I don't think anybody listening would disagree that at some point that phrase is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I just don't care anymore. I'm going to walk outside and I'm going to scream this out of my body.
Or
Um,
you dance it out, or you chant it out.
yes.
Like the last thing I wanted to actually introduce to this podcast was I came across some research. Apparently, it's a modern neuroscience calls it the Sanskrit effect. I don't know if you've heard about this, Krista, but basically, the Sanskrit effect was the term coined by this neuroscientist called Dr. James Hartzell. So he's been studying these Vedic pundits, right? And he found that those years and years of chanting, of memorizing these Sanskrit texts, actually significantly enhanced their brain cognitive functions. And so what the research showed was they had looked at 21 trained Sanskrit scholars and they'd studied the MRI scans. They'd showed an increase of gray matter density in those regions, which are linked to memory, attention, thinking speed, brain connectivity, which was stronger. And it was almost like an updated processor, right? And when you're thinking about chanting these precise pronunciations, these rhythmic repetitions, it is about complexity regarding memorization. It does require deep focus and breath control. And they've likened it to be a gym workout for the brain. Now, in ancient India, they always knew this, but it's only now that the science is catching up with it. So you're thinking about the daily recitation of verses like the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita. They have sharpened our intellect and strengthened our memory. But only now is science catching up and saying, oh, you know what was happening centuries and decades ago? Well, yeah, that actually worked. And it's only until modern science is giving us evidence based proof are we then going, oh, great. It's not just heritage, it's a mental superfood. Great. I can now incorporate this into my daily lifestyle. But basically, the reason I brought that last bit up is yes, it's about brain boosting. Yes, we can be proactive about our habits and our behaviors day to day. I feel like a lot of people end up forgetting how responsible they can be for their own health and wellness. And let's be honest, we've already spoke about this on the podcast. Not all of those wounds, traumatic events are going to be absolved. They do take time. Healing
Mm-hmm.
comes in layers. But it's actually saying that do you actually need the scientific proof? And I'm only posing this question because you had mentioned right from the beginning that you come from medical medicinal background. And obviously, as a strength and conditioning coach, we like our science, we like the research, but are we holding ourselves back because of that? Are we preventing ourselves from using certain things that could potentially benefit and enhance our longevity, our wellness, just by waiting for the research, which would probably become obsolete when the new piece of research comes out?
I was going to say we would be waiting lifetimes for that.
Yeah.
And I think really what did we do before all of this science, all of this data, all this analytical study and research? What did we do before that? We actually tried healing people with what we had, which was in our backyard, in our front garden. It's pretty, I feel like Sanskrit is going back to the basics upon which our indigenous ancestors were taught by the land. And I feel that Sanskrit is the bridge between ancient wisdom that has been forgotten and those hertz and frequencies of the said chants you speak of re-trigger and activate light codes we accepted as whether it's this lifetime or the last or whichever lifetime, we've accepted them at one point and we forgot them. And I think the brain activity to remember is actually a light code to awakening. And if we're using those things now, it would be, why did we veer off from natural medicine?
Yeah. And I know that medicine has helped us um, prevent a lot of diseases. They have helped people live a longer life because of that. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there has to be a balance between the two. We cannot solely rely on artificial medicinal tools that perhaps, they do come from herbs, they come from nature. And how can we enhance what we have around us to better ourselves?
Completely agree. 100%. And what was, I mean, we could say this is all capitalism, right? But really, there is now data behind herbology. There is data and frequency behind every leaf, every root, and all of them sing a frequency at a specific hertz for a specific area of your body. And if your body is delinquent in that, you will crave such herb in food, in water, in lotions, in scents. You will be drawn to that frequency of that herb or flower or root, whatever the plant is, in other ways, hoping that you remember why you needed it. And that's where we're bridging this gap.
I mean, I think you ended that portion of our podcast so well. Like, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm going to go straight into our last portion of our podcast. And we forgot this last time, Krista. We forgot to pull a card. And I've literally pulled a card and I'm going to read it out. So if you wanted to get your Oracle deck, or if you have anything nearby, or even if you don't, I'll let you ponder on that whilst I read the card that I pulled. Now, the card that I pulled, it's basically got a skeletal imagery of basically a hollow bone. It looks like a huge antler, which has the skull, and then it's got some feathers hanging down from this. Now, it's very interesting imagery wise, but the card in itself is actually called Hollow Bone, and it actually says teachability. So I'm going to read out what this oracle card says, and hopefully it will match up what we've been talking about today. So the words that accompany this card, Hollow Bone, is teachability, humility, being empty so that the wind of spirit can breathe through you. Now, the hollow wing bone of an eagle is a flute for the shamans. The appearance of the hollow bone invites you to become empty of your notions of who you are, to check your ego at the door, and to know that this is not about you. Relinquish your need to be right and to express an opinion, as this will not change anything right now. You are being called to practice humility. Hollow yourself out and hear the wind blow through you and play you like a flute. You will learn the language of the squall and the storm and understand the message in the summer breeze. There is an important communication waiting for you. Humility is the swiftest path for you to become like hollow bone. Drop all notions and titles that bolster your ego. Eliminate the doer and allow things to happen of their own accord. Remember that you can accomplish almost anything if you are willing to let someone else take credit for it. Hollowbone has come to caution you that to believe 50% of what others think and only 10% of what you think. Trust your experience, not what you have read in sacred books or holy texts. This will allow you to turn apparent danger into opportunity. Remember, you are an insignificant grain of sand in the grand scheme of life, and as important as the brightest sun. That's quite interesting.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah. I feel like it was giving us a cryptic overview of what we've been talking about.
Yes, definitely resonate with that.
Yeah. Did you have a card in mind, or do you have anything near you? I know this was an impromptu putting you on the spot.
Yes, actually, I do. I
Oh,
have an oracle deck near me,
okay.
and it's a true love oracle, but bear with me. No, we're not talking love and relationships, but hear me out. The love and relationship that you have with yourself is the most realist relationship you're ever going to have. So I pulled a cord. The card I pulled was life purpose.
Oh,
Yeah. So, life purpose, your own natural intuition and the genuine wisdom of your heart is here to guide you. At the deepest level of our existence, loving and being loved is a major part of our life purpose. When we feel it within us all the time, as our souls call for deeper connection and meaningful expression of the most powerful force of the universe, love. During those times in your life when you are not in a relationship or experiencing relationship problems, it can be empowering to remember your greater life purpose as being of love. Giving and receiving love is not an act confined to intimate relationships or family. You can enjoy this beautiful energy anywhere you are by choice. Remember that you are part of a huge family here on earth, connected to every living thing, including plants and animals. In order to attract the kind of love you want or rekindle love in your current relationship, it is necessary to be love whenever you can. It is the higher life purpose for all of us. How is it possible to be love? Well, firstly, it's important to realize that it's not about being perfect or saintly. Being love actually comes naturally when you take a step back from your routine and attitudes and tune in to who you really are. Your own natural intuition and genuine wisdom of your heart will guide you. You have drawn this card today because the universe would like you to experience yourself as love so that you can feel your higher life purpose firsthand. Trust that love is not an external thing you must find and keep. It is unlimited and always within you.
I'm going to add a plug to that and say, go buy my book, Love Within, because that is all about nurturing inner love, building fulfilling relationships, especially with ourselves. And the way you describe that card about interconnected with everything else, there is a soul chapter on that individually. And so I wanted to obviously give that a huge plug. It's on Amazon worldwide, or you can even go onto tulsivasani.com. The link is in the description box. Head over to the page, which it has all my books, so you can have a little bit of a read about it. I absolutely loved this podcast today, Krista. I don't know about you, but I loved having this mindset shift in this episode, and I'm so grateful that we were able to share our own perspective on this. Hopefully, opening others up to the communication with their friends, with their families, with themselves.
Absolutely. Perspective is everything. And having the conversation with yourself is one thing, but bringing in the people that you love and care about into also sharing perspectives is only going to open your eyes and also your heart. And that is the goal here is when we lead with an open heart, we're going to draw on the same frequency. And sometimes when you can do that together with some of your, most favorite people, I would assume, I would hope it makes it so much more enjoyable. It makes it more profound. And you reestablish what you already knew was there was you are love. It's what changes is how you receive it, how you give it, and how you exist as it, right?
Mm. You've come up with some profound one liners, couple of liners in this podcast. And
Thank
I'm
you.
so grateful that you're able to fill in for Kelly, who is abroad, who is in Australia, probably sleeping at this very moment. But thank you, Krista. Thank you so much for allowing me to pick your brain, to expand my own perspective around where we carry stress, how we can identify the origin of it within ourselves. Guys, we could have probably gone on for another hour, but I want you to tell us what you thought about this episode. Please do share this episode with someone who might need a boost this week. And if you're listening to this on YouTube or even on Spotify, make sure you hit subscribe, click the follow button, hit the notification bell on YouTube so you don't miss out on future episodes. And make sure you keep following us. And remember, the sky isn't the limit, it's just the view. So keep being unapologetically you. I thank you guys so much, and I will see you all on the next one.